Okay, we are now live streaming.
All right, so we're at 9:01 a.m. We can go ahead and call to order.
Sure. So we'll do a roll call vote since we are still a hybrid meeting. We'll go and order the agenda. Shauna Janeway sitting in for David Sanders.
Here.
Dave Cifuentes sitting in for Marlene Fonseca.
Present.
Chad Boggio.
Here.
Lisa Palombi.
Here.
Dana Brown.
Here.
Tony Royster.
Here.
Matthew Crawford sitting in for Matthew Rednick.
Here.
Paul Gerard sitting in for Matt Zabo.
Present.
That is 8 members present and a quorum.
Thank you so much. So next item, public comments. Do we have any public comments?
For those who are participating via phone or via telecommuting, if you wanted to make a public comment, please do so by pressing *9 on your phone to put yourself in the speaker queue. For those who are present in the room, please bring your speaker card up to the front. Seeing none in the queue and none in the room.
Thank you. So moving on to the minutes, we have 3 sets of minutes to approve from the April 6th meeting, May 18th special meeting, and the June 6th meeting. Do you have a motion to approve the minutes? So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, that motion was all for all 3 sets, April, May, and June.
Yes, it was.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and do the roll call vote again in the same order. So Shauna, your vote.
Aye.
Shauna votes aye. David, your vote.
Aye.
David votes aye. Chad, your vote.
Aye.
Chad votes aye. Lisa, your vote.
Aye.
Lisa votes aye. Dana, your vote.
Aye.
Dana votes aye. Tony, your vote.
Aye.
Tony votes aye. Matt, your vote.
Aye.
Matt votes aye. And Paul, your vote.
Aye.
Paul votes aye. It's unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to report 2334, the trust fund report.
Okay, I will take this report. This is an annual report to council. As the JLMBC is the trust of the funds for the for all activities that happen within the human resources budget. The JLMBC is responsible for those funds, and council requires over the trust fund itself. And so council requires that a report comes to it at the end of each fiscal year, identifying the status of the employee benefits trust fund. So in this report is an update of where we're at financially within that trust fund. Bring your attention to attachment A of the report itself. Attachment A outlines the fiscal activity that's been happening in the fund over the past fiscal year. So starting in July of 2022, we started off with an opening balance of 22 million. Through revenue collected and payments made for the activities processed for our program, we came to an ending closing balance of 24 million. But we have extending activity that needed to happen for that fiscal year that didn't happen yet, or some outstanding items. Those are listed in the next section as post-June activity. And then we also have some outstanding liabilities. So these are the items that we've talked about previously over the years. There's that refund project that we were doing over 10 years ago that we still have some employees or those that are due a refund who haven't been able to contact us, or we haven't been able to identify. That's still an outstanding liability. And as that program stands, will remain an outstanding liability as long as those people are unpaid. And then the wellness program, as far as those dollars are accounted for, that's an outstanding liability. Those funds are expected to be paid at some point. So our ending balance, and then there's also the reserve. I forgot to mention that the reserve requirement of 12% that we're supposed to hold as is listed there. And so our ending balance ends up as being only 2.8 million. On the next attachment B, is just the same information shown in a different way over a 3-year look back.
On the employee refund, how many people is that?
It is about a little under 1,500, and the majority of those are individuals who are either passed or we think may have passed, and we just haven't been able to work out with next of kin.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
Sure.
Have you engaged with, I mean, they're companies that provide services, building, locate people like that, you've done all that.
Yes, so we did actually work with, I think it was Office of Finance, I can't remember which one, on using LexisNexis to try to locate and send out as much notification as possible. It was an arduous process for us to send out all these notices and then try to get them to grab our attention to come back. We still do get people that notify us pulling out a letter from 2 years ago or something else. So it is somewhat reaching. We've also had a number of people notify us and say the amount of money that's for them for the refund isn't worth the effort. And so they just declined, but we still have to identify it as a liability. And it still builds interest technically, so they could change their mind later on. But we've tried everything we possibly can think of to do to try to locate them.
Is there a point at which, is there like, I don't know the word I'm trying to use, but essentially like an end date where you no longer have to reach out to them and it goes into whatever it goes into?
So we did not adopt an escheatment process. That would be, as far as I understood it, it would be an escheatment process where we'd say this unclaimed property would go to the state, go to the county for them to be able to still have as a claim. And we did not identify an escheatment process to pass those funds over. We are essentially our own escheatment. So we, yeah.
And now ask regarding just the general financials. I'm going from year to year, you had $2 million, which sounds and looks great. But when you then put in your post-June activity, the balance is suddenly significantly lower. Is there a concern there? Is that a normal rollover that's kind of accounted in that starting balance? How are we supposed to look at that?
Right. And I would say it's more the latter. The way that this fund operates, it is somewhat normal. It is common for us to have amounts, and we're spending large dollars each month, right? We're spending 30 million plus each month in expenditure on premiums and needing to carry that money over from another account. So it is not uncommon for us to have that kind of buildup at the end of the year. It's actually quite normal. And so there isn't necessarily as much concern. There's other factors in this too that we can't necessarily control. So like the contractual services and the department staffing, those always have to happen outside that post activity, just in the nature of them. If that answered the question. Yeah. And the last attachment to it, not if there's any other questions, but the last attachment is the actual report that's going to go to council. So it is our same kind of cookie cutter report that we've had that goes to council with the narrative explanation, and then attachment A, that breakdown would be included with the report itself.
Were there any other questions? We can make a motion to receive and file and approve the report. Move. Second.
Okay, then we will go on a roll call vote, and we'll start with you, Shauna. Shauna, your vote?
Aye.
Shauna votes aye. David, your vote?
Aye.
David votes aye. Chad, your vote?
Aye.
Chad votes aye. Esteban, your vote?
Aye.
Esteban votes aye. Lisa, your vote?
Aye.
Lisa votes aye. Dana, your vote?
Aye.
Dana votes aye. Tony, your vote?
Aye.
Tony votes aye. Matt, your vote?
Aye.
Matt votes aye. Paul, your vote?
Aye.
Paul votes aye. And Petty, your vote?
Aye.
Petty votes aye. It's unanimous. The motion passes.
So moving on to committee report 2335 staffing reimbursement.
Hello, this is Ted Vasquez. Committee Report 2335 is our staffing reimbursement report for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2022-2023. The report requests that the committee approve reimbursements from the Employee Benefits Trust Fund for personnel department salary costs of the 4 positions serving the LA Well program and the 2 positions serving the Live Well program. And attachment A of the report provides the calculations of these costs. The LA Well program's total reimbursement amount for the fourth quarter is $136,317.72. And the Live Well program's total reimbursement amount is $110,227.15. And that concludes this report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions from anybody? So I'm looking at the the trust fund report and comparing it to what you're saying. So we're just looking, this feeds into the one line called personnel department staffing on.
So,
that?
so this particular report would feed into the line that, if I can go back to that report for post-activity, since it did come after, so it would be the line under payments, April through June 2023.
So the annual cost would be 625 on the top plus the June.
Correct.
The question, if not, we can do a motion to approve the reimbursements. Thank you.
Okay, and then we'll do another roll call vote in the same order. So Shauna, your vote?
Aye.
Shauna votes aye. David, your vote?
Aye.
David votes aye. Chad, your vote?
Aye.
Chad votes aye. Esteban, your vote?
Aye.
Esteban votes aye. Lisa, your vote? Lisa votes aye. Dana, your vote?
Aye.
Dana votes aye. Tony, your vote?
Aye.
Tony votes aye. Matt, your vote?
Aye.
Matt votes aye. Paul, your vote?
Aye.
Paul votes aye. And Petty, your vote?
Aye.
Petty votes aye. It's unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you, and so we'll move on to the presentation from INED.
Morning, my name is Megan Gardner, of Keenan Associates, and I'm joined today by Pega Rosie from INED. I'm going to do a brief introduction, and then Pega will walk us through the details of the 2022 plan year for the INED vision. As you know, the INED plan has been in place since 2017, when it was peeled off from your medical plan. It used to be combined, but they did become a standalone plan in 2017, and INED was the carrier that was selected through RFP process to provide vision care services for the city of LA. Their contract runs through the end of this year, 2023, and last year we added some enhanced benefits to the program in the form of INED 360, where members can go to plus providers that provide a higher level of contracting with INED that provides savings at point of service for members in the form of $0 co-pays and the ability to achieve frames and contacts in the same year. So various forms of benefits for employees to utilize. They are continuing to service members also on site in the form of pop-up clinics. We have some upcoming here in the month of October, and they've been doing that throughout the year. Just a little bit about the utilization and the enrollment. We talked a lot about the pandemic over the course of the past couple of years. Vision has normalized since the pandemic. We are seeing a return to pre-pandemic utilization levels and enrollments. Your plan includes the $10 copay with $0 copay at plus providers. I'm happy to report that about 53% are utilizing plus providers, so they're achieving those benefits. And again, you have retinal imaging as part of your plan. Your enrollment did decrease just a little bit, but I think that's part and parcel of what we are kind of seeing with retirements and attrition throughout the plan. But I am happy to report for 2023, which is, this contemplates 2022, but 2023, we are seeing an increase. So again, a little bit of a dip through attrition and then jump back up to the actual enrollment and membership. As I mentioned, and I'm on page 5 of the slide deck, utilization has rebounded to pre-pandemic levels. So you're sitting at about 32.3% in 2022 compared to 32% flat in 2019. So that's nice to see. We are forecasting a little higher utilization for year 2023, which we're currently in at about 33%. So folks are starting to use their benefits in 2023, and that's ticking up. And that comes in the form of exams, up 3.2% in 2022 over the prior year. And happy to report that those exams are preventative in nature and are identifying some key chronic indicators such as diabetes, cataracts, and hypertension. About 5% of the claims that came through identified those in your numbers, so that's excellent. That means that they can take action and help kind of reduce any claims that may be on the medical side. So all good things there. As far as materials in the form of glasses and frames and lenses, utilization is in line with prior years, sitting right at 26.3% as compared to 26.1% of the prior year. But that is actually a little higher than the book of business for IMED, which I know Pega will go into detail on. And glasses continue to be very popular. I like mine. So I'm going to turn it over to Pega to go through additional details. Pega?
Thank you very much, Megan. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your time today. So as Megan mentioned, we're going to go over the utilization and overall vision benefits with regards to 2022. So we can go to the next slide, please. So starting with our overall summary, I wanted to discuss some of the key activities. Megan mentioned some of these as well. We implemented I360 last year in July of 2022, so very, very excited about that. We successfully conducted a pop-up clinic and 67% of the available appointments were confirmed and performed. As far as an overall assessment, about a 2% decrease in enrollment is what we saw compared to the prior year. But again, as Megan mentioned, it kind of jumped back up in 2023. The exam utilization increased over 2.5%, so very excited about that. Diabetic utilization continues to reflect less than 1% of exams. However, diabetes is detected in 1.6% of the overall exam utilization. All in all, in the 2022 plan year, IMED saved the city of Los Angeles over $5.9 million, and member savings on an average was around 69%. And that 5.9 million average was actually 3% higher than last year. So excited to share that good news with you guys. Next slide, please. All right, so here's a quick overview of the enrollment. We mentioned there was a slight decrease from 2021 to 2022, so around 2%. The Anthem population decreased about 4%, which represents 34% of the total population, and Kaiser about 2%, which represents 64% of the total enrollment. Here you can see an overview from January 2017, through December 2022, and overall eye exam utilization increased by 5.6% over the prior year. So that's really, really great news. Again, we're picking up from pandemic days. 48% of members who did receive eye exams from July to December, that's after I360 was implemented, they did go to Plus providers and ended up paying $0 out of pocket. So really glad to see those members utilizing the I360 benefits. Here's a little bit of a deeper dive into the exams and utilization. Again, overall exam utilization is about 32%, which is higher than the prior year and significantly higher than our book of business. Anthem represented 44% of the annual eye exams in 2022, and Kaiser represented 54%. We mentioned the diabetic plan results were a little bit less than 1%, which has been steady historically. And about 5% of the eye exam utilization were identified as high risk, with hypertension, diabetes, and cataracts being the most prevalent. As far as materials are concerned, they remain steady. Again, material utilization is 12% higher than our book of business. And City of Los Angeles enrollees prefer eyeglasses at around 78% and contact utilizers around almost 22%. So here's a quick look at the overall network. So City of Los Angeles members are on the Insight network, which is comprised of 24% retail and 76% independent. And in the middle, you can see how many members were going in network. So 96% of City of Los Angeles members are going in network, which is great because as you know, when members stay in network, it lowers their out-of-pocket costs and they get the most out of their benefits. Retail continues to be a very valuable component of the network, with 47% of all eye exams performed at a retail location and 48% of materials. So here's a quick overview of the average frame price by location. So City of Los Angeles members get $150 frame allowance and $200 when you go to Plus providers. So about 40% of members purchased frames within their $150 allowance, which is up 6% from last year. And over 53% of purchasers went to Plus providers and it ended up paying $0 out of pocket. Again, just really excited to see this high utilization of the I360 benefits at Plus providers, saving members out of pocket costs. So let's talk a little bit about wellness, starting with engagement. Again, we mentioned we implemented I-360 in July of 2022, which really eliminated that barrier for members to go and get that annual eye exam with providing a $0 eye exam copay when they go to Plus providers. We also have our enhanced cost estimator tool, Know Before You Go, where members can go and get an estimated out-of-pocket cost for their visit prior to going. And one other part about that particular feature that I personally love is that it's an educational tool. So it also gives members a simple English description of each of their benefit components, allowing them to better understand their benefits. In addition, we saw a 2.1 increase in the microsite logins. So again, more activity on the member side. So happy to see that. Moving on to retinal imaging. Retinal imaging is covered for City of Los Angeles members with a $10 copay. And retinal imaging really just maps the inside of your eye and allows us to be able to better detect high-risk conditions earlier on. And retinal imaging represented about 30% of eye exams. I do want to point out that less than 10% of iMed's book of business clients actually cover retinal imaging. And diabetic benefits, which include an additional office visit and diagnostic testing every 6 months, is available for City of Los Angeles members. And that's very, very important because diabetes does continue to be the #2 high-risk condition identified by routine exams for the City of Los Angeles members. And I wanted to just go over I-360 again. Very, very excited to be able to implement I-360, reducing the eye exam copay when members go to Plus providers from $10 to $0, which hopefully really entices members to go and get that annual eye exam. They also get an additional $50 added to their frame allowance, making their frame allowance $200 when they go to Plus providers. And I'm excited to share that just from the months of July to December 2022, there was an incremental savings of over $106,000 by implementing I-360. And here's a quick overview of our performance guarantees. Just going to touch on a few. 100% of ID cards being mailed within 10 days, 100% of eligibility files updated within 2 days. And really what that means is when City of Los Angeles members enroll in their iMed benefits, they get their ID cards, they're eligible, and they can use their benefits at any time. And that concludes our presentation. Any questions?
I have a couple. Regarding the retinal imaging utilization, you mentioned it represents 30% of IHA. Given that it's a richer type of benefit, as you mentioned, and it has a pretty low copay, is there a reason why there isn't more utilization of that?
That's a great question. Really, I think it just depends on whether the members want to actually utilize that particular benefit or not. It's there on their benefit summary. So it could be partially education, and it could just be that they're not, like I said, a part of education, not necessarily aware. But when they go and get their eye exam, they are offered to get a retinal imaging. So I think maybe one thing we can do is kind of hone in on the fact that it is a covered benefit. You know, with members, there's so much going on with benefits, medical, dental. So sometimes the vision kind of falls through the cracks. So maybe one thing we can focus a little bit more on next year would be educating members on the fact that retinal imaging is covered.
Thank you. And the other question I had was, do we know how many people are utilizing that ability to use their frame and contact allowance in the same year? Has there been a big uptake in that, or is that even not in the data yet?
I do not have that information. I can take that question back and follow up with you.
I know it's new, so I don't know if that's even laid out.
That's actually not new. Just to point out, that's actually a benefit that really sets iMed aside from other vision carriers. That's one thing that we actually allowed. What's new is the I-360 benefit, but being able to use your full frame allowance and your full contact lens allowance is a part of your iMed benefits historically.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I do. I have a question. So when you receive a card, like an ID card, is that something that you get when you initially enroll and then you never get? I mean, that's it. So in other words, for as long as you've been around for us, some people have not received a card in many years.
That is true. So iMed does send out what we call a welcome packet initially, where members get a set of ID cards, a listing of their nearest providers, an overview of their benefits when they initially sign on. So after that, we do not send ID cards every year. However, iMed members do not need ID cards to use their benefits, and there are multiple great avenues to get your ID card. One is actually your iMed app, and I'll actually show you how easy and quick it is right now. So wherever you are on your iMed app, oh, I'm sorry, I have the blur feature on, but wherever you are, once you're signed in, if you give your phone a quick shake, your ID card appears. So that's a quick and easy way to be able to access your ID card. You can call customer service. If you want another set mailed to you, you can access it on the member web portal as well. But yes, we do initially just send it out once the member enrolls that first year.
Okay, that's fine. I asked because one of probably one of the biggest questions that we get in HR is about, who covers our eyes. Like probably every day somebody asks that. And
Oh.
right, so obviously, the Anthem members for sure, they're like, oh, where do I go? And probably every day somebody asks that. So I feel like, they're not quite sure. And but that app is a good reminder, and perhaps the personnel department can put it in our newsletter or the stuff that we send out regularly. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely, and I could follow up with flyers on easy access on how to do your ID cards as well. Any more questions?
Yeah, can I add on to that? So as an Anthem subscriber who goes to the eye doctor once a year and gets their contacts, I had no idea that something new started last year. And I don't know who the plus providers are. So yeah, we have a big information gap. So that, I don't know if we do remind people.
Or okay.
Yeah, and I'm more than happy to work with Paul and team and Megan and everyone to kind of put together information that would be helpful for members, or a little quick hit where they can kind of see a quick overview of what's available to them with regards to vision that can be posted somewhere that members have access to or employees have access to on a regular basis.
Any more questions or? Okay, thank you.
Thank you everyone for your time today.
All right, so moving on to committee report 2336 on the HR committee.
Yep. So I will be taking this one as well. So this is our regular update that we've been bringing. So the report starts up with giving a background on all the updates that we brought to the committee over time since this project has started. And through that process, we have talked a number of times over kind of impacts to employees that we've experienced through the current transition going from payroll systems. And then last month, we had told, not last month, excuse me, last update, which was in June, we had told the JLMBC that we were in the process of starting heavy testing that was going to overlap with open enrollment. And we were really concerned about our ability to be able to do that testing and open enrollment at the same time. Since that update, we have not actually had any testing done. So this update is to try to tell you where we're at. So we were supposed to start testing immediately under the end-to-end process. There's 3 stages of testing that happened, as we talked about previously in the committee. The first one was unit testing, which we were heavily involved in, and we did a lot of unit testing. Unit testing is just that. It's just testing one function to make sure it works, so that you can put a dollar amount in a dollar field. Like that's all it is. And then end-to-end testing is start to finish of a process. So I have an employee that gets hired. I can enroll them into benefits. I get the data that I need to do. It gets sent back. I can do that whole process of starting an employee and getting an offer. The last part of testing was parallel testing, which is just beginning right now, where they test system to system to make sure that the full array of functions works out as expected. So end-to-end testing was supposed to go over 4 phases. At the time in June, they were in phase 2, and we were supposed to actively be involved in phase 2 to start testing. We were unable to get started on testing because the data that we needed, the files that the system was supposed to produce to give to us, were not working. They were flawed. So they were not able to create a file until recently, until about the beginning of August. They finally got a file together that we could actually use, but testing had gone through and went ahead. So phase 2 and phase 3 all closed, and they could not allow us to get back into those phases. Once they're closed, they're closed. So we have to reconfigure how we're going to do testing. The original plan was each cycle of HRP testing was a payroll cycle. So we were going to do in our regular functions of day-to-day activity, we send data back and forth each payroll cycle. And each payroll cycle has, its own issues and own concerns kind of in doing that process. But the plan overall, that was we were going to test 3 payroll cycles back to back with data going back and making changes and all those things. Now we can only test in one. And so we are trying to reconfigure how that's going to work and how testing will be successful in just combining everything into just one cycle. There's going to be things that we can't test. That's just a reality that we have to live with. And we have a deadline date as well, because end-to-end testing is actually extended. So this identified that it was going to end in September. It's extended through October. So we have the remaining 6 weeks or so to be able to complete this one plan of testing. So we're making it work as much as we can, but we recognize that there's going to be some potential unfavorable fallout from not being able to test as sufficiently as we wanted to. So this report is also highlighting what we're going to do to combat that. And just to cover bases as well for parallel testing, which is starting right now, we are going to have a little bit of exposure to it, although we're not actively involved. The way that parallel testing is set up, which is identified on page 4, is going to be really done by the HRP team, and they're going to tell us the results and then essentially ask for advice on kind of how to address those results if there's any negativity from those results, but we're not going to have as an active testing role. So the main focus was end-to-end. And so through this process, we had identified a lot of concerns from the very beginning that we raised a flag on and tried to identify so we could try to mitigate from the beginning. And a lot of those concerns are still there. So the number one concern that we have is data integrity. And that's been from the beginning. We've already seen some issues of data integrity already affect us, where in the current process, the data that we're receiving is coming from a system that is getting it from another system, and things get lost in translation. And so we've had situations where employees come over and they're missing components of data that is incredibly important for us to take action. And so we can't take that action. And we usually find out about it through a whistleblower process, right? It's the employee that's saying, hey, I haven't got my offer. And we find out, oh, yeah, it's because this is missing or this is happening. We don't have an ability, unfortunately, at this time to be able to identify that something's missing. And our vendor, TELUS, formerly LifeWorks, formerly Morneau Chevelle, also doesn't have an ability to be able to know anything's wrong, because they just receive data and the data is as good as what it says. They have no ability to be able to say that, hey, this member shouldn't be shown as terminated. They should be shown as hired. They're not going to know. It would only be staff for us to be able to review the data, the thousands and thousands of rows, to be able to tell whether something's wrong. And we don't just have that framework. So in the concern of data integrity, of something going wrong, in this concept of more occurrences of some data being missing, some data being mapped incorrectly and told to us incorrectly, we are still going to rely on the whistleblower program for the most part of something identifying it being wrong. But we're working with TELUS to identify a plan B of how we'd address that. We suspect that should that happen or continue to happen in a larger frequency, it's going to be a while until that data can be corrected. In the way things work, data goes from the city to the vendor every single day. So if we were to identify a problem and we said, hey, this person's not supposed to look like that, let's make that correction, the next file is going to load and it's going to overwrite what we did until the city corrects that data. So we're looking at a process to try to work with TELUS to understand how we can avoid that. How can we work around it? If it takes the city weeks or months to correct a problem, how can we ensure that that employee is not negatively affected if we can manually correct it? So it is still in the works, but that's the goal ultimately, is to address the data integrity problem of, once we find out about something, of us try to find a workaround to be able to get to the employee. It's still going to be extremely manual, it's still going to be labor intensive, but it is the one thing that we're working on to try to address that issue. For retrospect, the overall plan in this concept that we had negotiated and talked about in going with HRP was data that the vendor, TELUS, is receiving is going to be in the same format that it currently receives today. So HRP, the Workday, is supposed to map data back to the old coding language. After we're confident that Workday is updated and there aren't changes to data and there aren't changes to process and there aren't new fields being created and new other things that are being done, after we feel that that's at a level that's sufficient, then we'll transition over to using the actual real data that's coming from the system directly to TELUS, which would be a whole nother implementation phase. But there is still going to always be that risk, whether it is during this period of transition where the data is being mapped, or even afterwards, that there's going to be an integrity issue potentially from what we're experiencing. The next major, and you can stop me anytime if you have any questions. Sure.
Sorry, Paul. Being new to the committee, it's hard for me to conceptualize what this might look like to one of our members who suffers from the data integrity problem. So in practical, can you give us a practical example of what that might look like?
Sure. So the one that we've been experiencing mostly is a brand new member. So when a new employee is hired, we tell them as long as they have their requirements on their first paycheck, they should be able to get an offer from us. So if an employee, they're not going to understand, they're not going to see anything that happens on the system from their experience. If they know, hey, I got my first paycheck and hey, I know I worked sufficient hours and I should get benefits, and they try to log on, or they call our call center, a call center says, no, we don't see you, then that would be how the employee would know there might be a problem. There potentially is a data problem.
Yeah, if it's still eligible, that won't.
Correct.
Flag in the system and say, hey, you're entitled to insurance.
Correct. The other employee perspective issue would be that maybe an employee goes to seek care and they're told they don't have insurance. Maybe we got a notification that they were terminated, even though they weren't. Maybe there's something else going wrong with the data that would create a situation where they end up getting dropped. But that would be another scenario that's tangible for an employee to understand. A third one that we could think of is maybe they're not getting notices that we send them because their address isn't being updated. So we tell them, hey, we told you about this, and they said, I never got anything. And they look under their account and they see their address doesn't match, or something else doesn't match. Maybe their birthday was changed. Another example could be all of a sudden, out of the blue, the rates for their costs on their paycheck change because we got notification that they had a promotion that didn't happen, or another job change that didn't happen. That's all automatic. The employee doesn't get a choice. We see a job change happen that fits the criteria, we change the rate. And we send them a notification, but if the data is not correct, they're not going to know about it unless they check their check and then tell us, hey, that doesn't look right. So the employee does need to know, they need to be aware of what's going on with their coverage and pay attention to things to let us know that something's happening. I did forget one piece of this mitigation step, which might answer a question that you might be thinking of right now. We're also working with TELUS to try to have analysis done to look at large rates of change that happen unexpectedly. So as I said before, TELUS isn't going to know. They're not going to know that an employee isn't supposed to be terminated when the data shows were terminated. But they might be able to say, out of a regular file feed, I see 500 transactions happen on a file. Now I see 5,000. Like that might be a flag for us to be able to look at the data and maybe try to see that something's wrong or not. But that's really going to depend on my staff to be able to look at it and see that we can identify an issue. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just was wondering, I think for existing eligibles, you know, if they drop coverage, if something changes, the amount of withholding, et cetera, for this patient, that all makes sense using what you described as the whistleblower technique, right? I mean, everybody's familiar with their insurance, you don't have it one month, you're gonna know. So, or you should know. But for people that are new, is there any thought been given to proactively reaching out to have them just reminded of, like, here's a summary plan description, here's how eligibility works, you should be looking for this, just because I foresee a problem where, you know, somebody's entitled to insurance, they don't enroll because they weren't notified, and they have a major medical issue. You know, rectifying that is gonna be, you know, probably costly. So that was just my idea that, you know, maybe for the people who are, you know, brand new or initial abilities question, they might be proactively notified, you know, look out for it.
No, that's a great idea. And actually, we're trying to do something that might cover that. We still have an ongoing problem, which has been something we've been trying to curtail for quite a while, of employees just getting the wrong information about how things work, right? So there is unfortunately with the city being decentralized the way it is and supervision happening different ways, lots of times there is I think I know how this works. And so somebody tells them this is what happens when it's not true. And so our attempt to try to correct that over time has been, don't tell anybody anything, tell them to contact us, tell them to go to our website. So I think that's what we're trying to do repeatedly as we're talking with departments, as we're trying to get that word of mouth out of don't say what you don't know. And so I think it does kind of address that to a certain degree of us having that mantra where as long as they can get to our website, as long as they can get to us and see that, they should know how this works and when they're supposed to get something, hopefully.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I continue? So the next large issue actually I just covered, which was access to care interruptions right from the data, which is related to the data integrity directly. So that one is still, it's identified separately, but it's directly related to the first issue that we encountered. So we are attacking that the same way. The third one that we can see that we're expecting are going to be large payroll errors. We have not gotten a chance to really understand how payroll is going to work at all in this new system and what our role fully is. Although we've talked about it, we've been in meetings, we haven't been able to experience it, and we have a lot of questions still on how we're going to be able to do what we do today. Actively, my staff is in payroll every single pay period, making changes, and so we don't know how that's going to look. So in this concept, though, too, as the files go back and forth repeatedly with each other on each pay period, there is a strong chance that there could be mass payroll errors that we're not aware of. So we're not sure how we're going to be able to rectify them when they do happen. But it goes back to the whistleblower kind of process. We understand that this new system, or maybe understand is not the correct word. We believe and we've heard that this new system has a lot of reporting capabilities that are more enhanced than the current reporting capabilities. So we're going to be monitoring those reports or trying to do more reports on a regular basis. But as soon as we hear something, then we'll make a plan of action to try to address them. We work directly with controller on a regular, we're very strong with controller on our process. So we will be able to fix a plan once we see something's problematic or happening. I think the main concern here is just the frequency and the level of time it goes on for us. And just for clarification too, the way that benefits work, if a missed deduction happens or something else happens, most likely I'm having to bill that person separately from the payroll system. There is not a regular process for us to do that, and it varies by deduction within the payroll system itself. So it does. Every time that happens, it either impacts our employees or impacts my staff, but it impacts kind of just the regular workflow and our ability to recoup that lost money. Yes.
I'm not sure if it, and I apologize for, I'm still learning.
Oh, no.
How things go, but on July 26th, we had a small, what appeared to be at least potentially hiccup. I think everything worked out well. Was that related to the old or the new system? Is that a payroll error?
I'm not sure if I'm aware of the July 26th issue.
So I know, I remember I checked with Paul on it because we were getting information from members that there was a possible. July 26th was the day on which the coalition, the Black Cat, I think most unions were going to get a one-time payout. And there was a concern with both regular payroll as well as that. And I believe it got resolved through great efforts. So congratulations to everybody, because I think to most people it was seamless and there wasn't an issue. But my understanding was that there was a payroll error. So I'm just wondering if that's related to this system, if it's the old system, and how was that worked out?
So I'm not really fully familiar with the error, but I do know that the old system, the Pacer system, is the one that's currently doing payments. So it would be the one that would have been handling the actual payment to the employee. And that's what I know really on that one. For a little bit of extra color, I will say right now, and for maybe your benefit, the Workday system is receiving information and sending information to the Pacer system, which sends information to our Tele system. And so that in itself has had a lot of problems, the talking back and forth between the Workday system and the Pacer system, which may or may not be part of the issue that you had raised. But in theory, from conversations that I've been involved with, the talk a lot with the HRP team is that removing that conversation should help minimize some problems.
Thank you.
A question, could you define exactly what particular type of payroll error are you anticipating?
Sure. So on a regular basis, so at the beginning of each plan year, we send all the payroll records to the system to take. So because each plan year is different on everything stops, gets erased, and we start brand fresh new on the first pay period of January. And then each pay period moving forward, we are sending changes only. So an employee newly promotes or newly gets hired, has a change in life status or whatever that changes their deductions. That's the only thing we're changing. And so in that concept of the system talking to each other, we rely on the system, the city system, telling us when something doesn't happen, if an employee doesn't make enough money to take a deduction, or if something happens outside of what we told it to do, to stop. It's hundreds of thousands of transactions, right? Each employee, there's 25,000 employees that we have about 11, 12 different deductions that they could possibly have. So it's a lot of, and they're each independent, and there's other tax issues on top of that. So there's a lot of transactions there for us to try to manage. We rely heavily on the reports coming back. So one potential problem is that the report doesn't tell us that something changed. And so that deduction that shouldn't have been there, or maybe should have been there, is not appropriate. Another function could be just the passing of information back and forth together, maybe isn't loaded correctly, or is loaded correctly but needs to be changed and isn't done correctly at that aspect. In current day, we're working on a very small time window to be able to make a change in a payroll cycle, right? So in a 2-week period, we really have about 2 to 3 days to physically make changes to that system before the payroll closes. That's when we have the ability to do anything. So if we find out in that 2 to 3 period that, whoops, 500 people have a problem and we need to fix 500, we have a mass process to be able to make that correction right now in current day. Don't know if that's going to happen in a new system or how that's going to work in the new system, but our ability to know that something's wrong and act on it is still all within the question window. So it can easily be, or can possibly be, that we identify an issue, but we can't take care of it in the time that we need to, and that we have to wait until next pay period to try to take care of it.
So what are they telling you how to address this issue? They're saying that we're what's going on.
Well, so sure, go ahead.
Relates to the implementation of any new payroll system, obviously, there's always risk for, errors and so forth, which is why the NTN testing and the parallel testing is so important. And I know that Paul and his team are very much involved in that right now. And, the HRP team, along with ITA, are, we are working through like sort of every scenario, but there will be some challenges as we go live. And so, I mean, it's kind of a scary thing, right? We could talk about all the things that could go wrong in a payroll transition system, and make everything kind of scary. But I think that what's most important is that you realize that we are doing everything that we can to ensure that whatever the issues are, they are minor, they are issues that we see and we're able to correct. I think that one of the things that Paul is trying to get across, though, is that the benefits piece is heavily reliant, if not vulnerable, to the payroll piece. And to the degree that there are, even now, right? Even now, if there is a mistake in payroll in PACER, it could possibly affect the benefits of the employee. So I think that most of this is just a little bit scary as we move into, a new world and a new life outside of PACER. And, but we are working on making sure that that transition is as accurate and as safe as possible.
It does seem like we have a complicated communications task. We as a city, maybe not we as a JLMBC, but to simultaneously tell everybody we have a brand new payroll system. It does a whole bunch of cool new things. It's an actual modern system that wasn't built at home 25 years ago. But all that's going to be great. But we really need you to look really, really carefully at every single paycheck for the next 6 months. It's a weird message, but I think that's sort of the needle that we have to thread is, yes, it'll be great. Yes, it will work. please make sure. Because the only way, as you said, the only way a lot of these things will get noticed is if the people see it. And, you know, I'm sure there are a lot of people that look at their paycheck really, really carefully and look at their deductions every single 2 weeks, but I know the money just goes in the bank. And unless the top line is noticeably different, not scale. So I think the real challenge, I think, is the communication challenge. So that people are confident, but you know, how do we tell all 25,000 our employees to trust that they're for the next 6 months on their paychecks?
So when these, is it 6 months from now, 3 months from now?
So the current plan is for testing to completely end by the end of next month, by the end of October, and for the Workday system to go live somewhere between November, December. So anything after go live could potentially be where we're going to see changes. But to points made earlier, data is happening every single week. Like we can see changes at any time, and we've already seen, you know, some things over the course of this past 3 years already occur in our current process. So it could happen at any time, quite honestly.
I think also I'd like to say that it's definitely need to notify and continue to notify. And it's always our payroll system is extremely complicated. Number one thing that people come to work for is to get work paid. And it's really unfortunate, especially with health benefits, you should, it's a great.
Right. Great. And the last one that we had identified was just user processing errors, which we've already experienced as well of new processes in the new system mean new chances and occurrences for things to be cataloged wrong. But the same mitigation effort is identified. It's going to be whistleblower. And so I think a lot of the comments made today are extremely important for us to try to get that message of employees to just pay attention to things.
Another quick question, during that time, whatever you're looking at, the additional staffing or contractors to assist you or something really major effort where it's dropped off 50%.
So in our current structure, we are, well, Chung's going to report it. We're pretty much fully staffed. So we don't have additional staff at this moment to look at, but we do have our contracting resources. So we are looking towards TELUS. They are the main component of where we're going to be trying to resolve these situations. Because outside of the payroll piece, really the member effect is going to be on their side. So we will be looking at them a lot, and we're discussing with them on options of how they can proactively try to address these from a staffing perspective as well.
Are they working with an agency now that have a similar type of payroll system?
I believe so. I remember them saying that they've worked with Workday before. Workday is a big company. They've been around and are lots of different places. So yes.
I think it's our system that's still coming.
So that's our update for the most part. It is going to be a lot happening over the next course of a few months. And we will continue to bring updates on how it's going and what we see as impacts.
Further questions on that item, we'll go ahead and move to report 2337 activities and.
Good morning, JLMBC members. This is Chung, and I will be going over the projects and activity reports for today. First up on page 1, we have an update on the Anthem network agreement between Anthem and Antelope Valley. Unfortunately, both sides were unable to formally terminated on August 15th, as as brought up to the JLMBC last month. Over the past 12 months, 18 city employees have sought services at Antelope Valley. These employees have been notified regarding the termination of the agreement, but may continue to seek, may continue to access emergency care at Antelope Valley if needed. Alternatively, they may also seek care from the local alternative hospital, Palmdale Regional Medical Center. Moving on down is an update on the medical plan and governance bylaw ad hoc subcommittees. Members for both subcommittees have had meetings to discuss the medical plan topics and bylaws. Both subcommittee activities are still ongoing at this time. And then if we scroll over to the bottom of page 2 is an update on the 2023 open enrollment planning. Staff is continuing to work on finalizing the electronic and paper communications for OE. We also have several in-person events being planned with the LA World benefit providers. These events include the Vision Public Clinics and walk-in informational sessions that are being scheduled for during open enrollment. Staff is also working with TELUS Health and GSD to complete the testing of the member portal and to complete the preparation of the open enrollment packages that will be sent out to members in late September. And lastly, we do have one staffing update. Skylar King has accepted our job offer for the accounting clerk position. He will be assisting the benefits accounting section. And with that hiring, I believe that most of our vacant position has been filled, maybe except for one at this point. And that concludes this report. I'm happy to answer any questions and also to take any items for the upcoming DMC meetings.
I have a question. Where did Skylar come from? He's right here. Hi, Skylar. Where do you work now, or where did you come from?
Like what company did I come from before?
Well, yeah, so you're new to the city in this job.
Yes.
Oh, well, let's give a round of applause. It's somebody who's actually filling a vacancy in the city.
Oh, yeah,
Welcome.
that's right. I'm gonna stand up.
So happy to have you.
We've been offering the vacancy, we have to be a steward.
Now creating a vacancy there. Or worse, somewhere in
You may
personnel.
have more than one vacancy.
The CNA was making emergency appointments. Well, building trades is hiring. Skylar, can I ask you a question? Your name is familiar to me. Where did you work before you took the position?
Well, I actually worked as a self-employed music teacher for the last year and a half out of Beaumont before I came here, so.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Very unique name,
100%.
Question on the Antelope Valley, the issue. How large are these Antelope Valley versus Palmdale Regional? How comparable are those in size, and how close are they? Like what's the distance between them?
I will need to check on the size of both facilities, but I believe from distance wise, I think well, they're both located in the Palmdale city, if I remember correctly. I think it was about
Come on, Nicole.
I can comment on that. Nicole Harbor with Anthem. I did bring up a few notes from our last meeting. So just to emphasize, there were only just 18 members who utilized the Antelope Valley in the last 12 months, so very low impact. Palmdale Regional is about 9 miles away from Antelope, so very close in proximity. For those 18 impacted members, we feel very confident that they'll continue to have sufficient access. Palmdale is about 190 hospital beds, so we anticipate they'll continue to have the same access that they do today. If there is an emergency need for care, they will still continue to be able to use Antelope. Thank you. Thank you.
Any more questions on the report? On to, do we have any requests for future agenda items? Seeing none, our next meetings are October 5th and November 2nd. And we're adjourned right on the dot, 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.